Lately, the Republican Party has become a punchline, especially Donald Trump and his rabid followers. Now, if you don't think or think I'm exaggerating, you didn't see Saturday Night Live. Here, take a look at a clip that people are still talking about a couple of days later.
So when people ask why you support Donald Trump, you just tell them.
He's going to take our economy from here to here. I like that.
He's not some cautious politician. He says what I'm thinking.
I don't know what it is. I just like the guy.
Okay, funny. But what is happening to the GOP? No laughing matter. This is what it's come to.
He's taller than me. He's like 6'2", which is why I don't understand why his hands are the size of someone who's 5'2". Have you seen his hands? They're like this. And you know what they say about men with small hands?
Look at those hands. Are they small hands? And he referred to my hands. If they're small, something else must be small. I guarantee you there's no problem. I guarantee it. All right. Okay.
All right. So, as in many ways, the GOP reaped what it sowed here. Now, none of this obviously has happened in just a vacuum. The party has let some extreme right-wingers define it. They've also let things like the birther controversy fester and so much more. And don't forget about how it nominated Mitt Romney, the guy who managed to insult 47% of the population in one fell swoop. But it's not just Trump. Guy in second, Ted Cruz. He's proud to glorify the type of assault weapons most commonly used in mass murders. Remember, making bacon on the barrel of a machine gun after what was then a very recent shooting tragedy. So did the GOP fry up itself? And certainly, Nan, they, if not aided and abetted, they certainly welcomed some of the louder voices, not just the Rush Limbaughs here, but the Glenn Becks, that they're coming in the dead of night to kick down the door, to take your guns away, you know, the Levins or the Savages, and some of the languages that went out there. It ramped up the base. You can argue it got folks, and he got a majority in the Senate, and it expanded a majority in the House. But look at some of the voices who scream, "You lie," in the middle of a State of the Union and the rest. The discourse didn't just get bad in the most recent debate. It has gotten worse, and it's gotten worse for a while. No, it's not just one party, but overwhelmingly what we're seeing right now. Trump didn't just come out of thin air.
Well, I would agree that Trump didn't come out of thin air, or the Donald Trump as presidential candidate phenomenon, because I do think more than anything else, Mr. Trump is, and I'm not the only one who has said this, he's a media brand. You know, what has he done most brilliantly at? I mean, he's been a developer, but what he's done most brilliantly at is creating Donald Trump, the phenomenon. We're seeing that played out now. But the root cause, while I eschew strident rhetoric, you know me well, and I'm not here to bang on the table and eviscerate anyone. But what has led us to this point is, in fact, and let's not ever forget this, because this is so important. It's important for Republicans to remember this too. Decade upon decade of really bad policy, unwise policy, that has been promulgated by Democratic and Republican administrations and Congresses. I would submit to you that when we empower the federal government as we have, yes, I am someone who believes that the federal government has too much power. There is too much opportunity for the rich to enrich themselves.
But if I could, just one,
the tax code rules and
look
regulations
at who we've talked about tonight. Take Trump out if we want to call him some outlier.
Yeah.
Ted Cruz. What do you think Ted Cruz is known for? Ted Cruz, he single-handedly attempted to not just demonize the government, but he made sure we had a shutdown. Ted Cruz, when we talked about what was going on the border, that some kook was talking about, that the military was training to invade America to take people's guns, he gave that credibility.
Richard,
I can keep going, but we have agents that demonize all government.
We've got Bernie Sanders on the left he's drawing from the same well as the Trump supporters. People are desperate. They feel,
But he's not making the government the devil.
I know Trump supporters who are good, hardworking people, and they are not wealthy. They pay their taxes. They're raising their kids. They see a lot going on that they can't directly influence, and yet with every successive administration, with every successive year, it gets worse, and they feel betrayed by all. They listen to Donald Trump.
Respectfully, Congresswoman, Bernie Sanders is talking about issues, and you might disagree with his take on the issues, but then you listen to some of the rhetoric we're hearing from the Republicans, and that's not about issues. That's just about anti-government, angry voices. I would submit that for a generation, the party has essentially allowed or given dog whistle cover to some of the people who harbor the most extreme views and allowed it to fester and sort of build on itself.
But respectfully, the opportunity for that kind of invective, which I eschew, and which I don't think is productive, but for that kind of invective to take hold among people, they have to feel at some level that it reflects their life.
Well, they keep getting told
People are working their butts off. They're paying their taxes, Richard, and what's going on?
I hear you. Right? I hear you. Nobody loves government. But if they keep hearing that, let's see, what happened before he stepped into office. You had Fox News, Glenn Beck leading it, Ted Cruz and the others supporting it, right? Even though he's probably not even from the States, saying he's a Muslim, he's not really an American, he's an illegitimate president before he even walked in. I've seen ugly politics for a while. When's the last time a president ever walked in under that cloud? And that was allowed by the party, not just by the right-wing radio.
It wasn't allowed by.
Ted Cruz is your probable nominee or possible one.
Ted Cruz was not the party's nominee. Ted Cruz came in as a, and I'm going to stop talking because I'm monopolizing this, but Ted Cruz was a Tea Party insurgent. Ted Cruz was not the party's nominee. Ted Cruz can't even get support on the floor of the Senate right now.
We'll see. He's telling me he's going to get 4 more nominations in the Senate this week.
Under certain desperate circumstances.
Endorsements.
Now I will give the floor to my esteemed colleagues.
I defer to the professor.
Oh, that's okay. Go ahead.
No, the only point I would make is just if we don't think that the party's been pulled drastically, just look at what happened to the last speaker. I mean, that says it all. A good man was driven away from politics, and Mr. Boehner was like, good riddance, do whatever you want. So now there's a new speaker trying to regain control, and he seems to be doing a good job, by the way.
But Nan, you probably would still be in Washington right now if some of the extreme voices didn't come to define you. And you were put, frankly, in a swing district and in an impossible situation because the dog whistles that Andrew spoke to put a person where if they so much as say there is such a thing as compromise, Ted Cruz once called compromise, he equated it to the word treason. Okay? And now the party's holding their nose, and it looks like this week at least they're going to try and get behind him to get around Trump. To me, politics ain't for the faint of heart, but you're reaping what you sow. What we're getting right now has been built up well over the last 8 years.
It has, but I think this is what we're all misunderstanding about Donald Trump. He is not just appealing to right-wing zealots who are screaming in anti-government. He is appealing to a Reagan independent, moderate, Catholic coalition. That's who he has stirred up. That's one thing. The other thing is, as much as you're saying he doesn't talk about issues, and I agree with you, and he doesn't talk about policy, what he does do is he reminds people consistently that in this end of the economic recession, they have been left behind.
Exactly.
And that resonates real with this group that he is stirring up. And I agree with you, the Republican Party has done a horrific job recognizing who its base is. It has a base that since 2007 started the Tea Party movement. There are very good people in that movement. They have a point to make about the deficit. They have a point to make about the debt. It has gone unheeded by the base for good reason. I mean, you mentioned John Boehner, because the party is too weak. And so for all of these reasons, they have gotten, completely overwhelmed by Donald Trump. Ted Cruz would not be the second potential nominee of this party if there was no Donald Trump. It would be a John Boehner, it would be a Marco Rubio, it would be a Jeb Bush. So I don't think we can say, because Ted Cruz certainly doesn't represent.
Well, they had options, Jeannie. We had Jeb Bush out there.
Not options who could compete with Donald Trump. Ted Cruz can compete from the right. Nobody else could.
I think you've hit on one of the key issues. The base has left the establishment within the party. But I would also suggest that some of that is the party establishment's doing also, and I feel badly for the Congresswoman, and I feel bad for friends of the show like Chris Shays, who I feel like you've been put in a position where you can't necessarily talk back or tisk some of the more rogue elements in the party. And I think the Republican establishment writ large hasn't really done that for fear of alienating the base much further, but that has breathed
Sarah
life into
Palin's a
this.
perfect example.
That's breathed life
right.
into it and made it its own monster.
It's very challenging indeed to, number one, having been a member of the big wave into the House in 2010, as we all know, in that 2010 election, there was only so much we could do. What could we effectively do without a Senate, right, and without a White House? We could stop further legislation that people would have found really, really troubling and bad. So we did do that. But you don't get a lot of credit for stopping something. And that was part of the reason 2012 was not a blockbuster year for Republicans. Part of it was that folks who've been so fervent about putting that wave in felt as though they hadn't gotten the results.
But we're going to talk about this in a little bit as we remember Nancy Reagan. Her husband famously said the Republican Party was a Big Tent party where you can have different voices.
As it should be.
Doesn't seem like it is now. When we come back, though, we'll go from Republicans to Democrats. Hillary Clinton, she's just about getting ready to knock out Bernie Sanders. Then she has to reel in the base. But the question is, can she do both? And when will the people start turning out in big numbers, or will they?